March 11, 1965. Dearest Suzie, please excuse my paper. This was all I could get my hands on right now. Anyway, it is paper. How is everything around there? How is the car getting along? I hope it isn't giving you a lot of trouble. How about my window above the air conditioner? Is it holding out okay? I have just about made a reputation over here as a jinx to fly with. Let me tell you about my troubles with aircraft. Last month, I was getting a checkout for IP. I was riding with the company's standardization pilot, and he was going to show me a good auto rotation. He tore the tail stinger off of one. So we went in and got another one. He said he wanted me to try one since he had messed up the first one. So when I came in, I was worried about my tail stinger, so I came in nose low and broke both of the little windows in the front and put a big dent in the nose of it. Then, about a week later, I totaled one. That's the one I told you about before. Okay, last week we had a troop lift at 4 o'clock in the morning. I had a brand new second sergeant flying with me, and I was going to check him out. We were flying along and we lost our hydraulic system. Without that, you just can't hardly handle the aircraft. Anyway, there I was, pitch dark, in formation, a brand new pilot, a full load of troops, and no hydraulics. That is real trouble. The only way you can get one on the ground like that is just fly it on like a fixed wing because you sure can't pull pitch. It's not bad during the day, but at night it makes you sweat. Anyway, we got it in all right. Does that sound to you like I'm having bad luck? Wait, there's more. Day before yesterday, I went out to take my monthly check ride with another IP. We practice a landing with the throttle in manual position. We do this so that if you ever lose a throttle governor, you know how to fly it by operating the throttle like a motorcycle grip. And you have to be real careful. If you roll the throttle just a fraction too far, it will ruin the engine. Anyway, I made a real good landing. Captain Kendrick was with me. He is an IP too, and he was checking me out. So we were sitting on the runway, and he says, "I'll take it." I thought he was going to try an approach, and just about that time the tower is yelling at us to hurry up, and I looked around to see if one was coming in behind us. While I was looking around, he rolled on full throttle. He ruined an engine, rotor system, tail rotor, and everything else in the powertrain. It was strictly his fault, and he is very quick to tell everybody that he was plain careless and everything. But the point is, I was in the airplane. So everybody starts kidding me about having a black cloud over my head and being a jinx. There's more. This morning, about 3 o'clock, we had an outpost, a little place called Jettisoned, overrun by the VC. They called us to go out and chase them off. I flew with the platoon leader in the rocket ship. It carries 48 rockets, and we call it the Hog. Now, this was the first time I'd ever been in the Hog, so I didn't know a thing about rocket systems. So anyway, we are flying along, and Captain Molinelli decides to fire a couple of rockets. He pulled the trigger, and nothing happened. So he thought he didn't have the system on. There are 3 switches on the console to operate the rocket system. One is to arm them, one is to light up the sight, and one is to jettison the whole thing in case one of them catches a fire. Guess which switch he hit? You guessed it. He threw the whole set, 48 rockets and $5,000 worth of launchers away. So this morning, we had to go out and spend the whole morning recovering them. Of course, they weren't any good, and we dumped them in a river, but at least the VC didn't get them. Again, it was certainly not my fault, because I didn't even know about the switches, but you can imagine the kidding I had to take today. Everybody is singing, "Black cloud hanging over my head," every time they see me coming. It's all in fun, though. When I first came to the armed platoon, Molinelli, the platoon leader, told me that it generally takes 30 to 60 days just to become an aircraft commander in the gunships, since there's so much to learn about tactics and the guns and all. So a guy starts out in the left seat. His job is strictly to fire machine guns. Each ship has 4 guns and 14 rockets. The aircraft commander sits in the right seat. He flies and fires rockets. This is what I was looking forward to. 30 to 60 days to just kind of sit back and learn the business. The first 2 days, I flew the left seat and fired the machine guns and loved it. I had a lot of fun on the range. Then, yesterday, we started to the range and Molinelli wanted me to fly right seat just to see what it was like. So he put me with the best rocket man in the platoon. So we went out. I was either darn lucky or a heck of a rocket man. He had to explain the sight to me before we went out, since I had never seen one of them before, but we got to the range and I started blasting. You only get 7 shots, 2 rockets at a time. I fired the first 2 at a house and missed, but I figured out the site on the first pass. On the second pass, he showed me a house hut, and I blew it apart. And the next 5. He couldn't believe it. When we came in, he told Molinelli that my place was in the hog. The hog carries 48 rockets, no machine guns. So, that is why I was riding with him in the hog this morning. Rocket men are hard to come by, I guess, so now I'm training to take over the hog. My life as a machine gunner was pretty short. That is, if I do okay in the rockets. They are certainly a challenge. The aircraft has to be set up exactly right before you can fire, so it has taken some doing. I'll bet I'm putting you to sleep with all this rambling. Like reading an adult book, huh? I'm pretty satisfied so far, but of course I haven't been shot at yet. I don't know what I'll think about when I do get shot at. Oh yes, I'm also a platoon instrument IP now in addition to everything else. So every time we have a little time, I have to take someone up for hood training. I have the only instrument ticket in the platoon. This is just one more thing to keep me busy, for which I'm thankful. Well, I didn't intend for this to turn into a book, but I'm just in a writing mood tonight. Did you give Shirley her pin yet? Tell her I hope she likes it. There's a little gift shop down here that has those things, and they only cost about $1, so I'm going to bring you a lot of that kind of stuff when I come home. I still didn't get that camera yet. I love you and miss you all very much. Say hello to the boys for me and tell Brian that I said he better be a good boy. All my love. Bill. War is unpredictable, but sometimes the bad luck seems to follow certain people more than others. In today's letter, Popi shares a story that feels almost like a comedy of errors, if the stakes weren't so high. From wrecked helicopters to accidentally jettisoned rockets, he starts to build a reputation among his fellow pilots as a man with a black cloud hanging over his head. But woven into the humor is something deeper. A glimpse at the sheer pressure of what these men were learning to do and how quickly the war was demanding they become experts at things they'd never imagined they'd be doing. This letter feels like one of those rare moments where you can almost hear Popi's voice. Not just in what he's saying, but in how he's saying it. It's longer than most of his letters so far, full of self-deprecating humor, rambling stories, and those little asides that make the whole thing feel like he's talking to Meemaw across the dinner table. At first glance, it reads like light-hearted banter, a man trying to make his wife smile from half a world away. But underneath the humor, you can feel how fast everything is moving. It's only been about 3 weeks since Popi joined the Cobra platoon, and he's already hurtling towards a new role. Not just as a machine gunner, but as a rocket man, flying some of the deadliest helicopters in the war. He thought he'd have 30 to 60 days to learn the ropes. He barely got 2. The helicopter Popi keeps calling the Hog was a Huey with the M3 rocket system, a heavily armed gunship version of the standard troop transport helicopter. The Hog carried 48 rockets mounted on pods under its stubby wings. Unlike the other gunships, which had machine guns along with rockets, the Hog was designed for one thing: firepower. Popi's role as the rocket man meant he wasn't just along for the ride anymore. He was the one pulling the trigger, aiming those rockets at targets on the ground. It was a whole new kind of flying. Part pilot, part gunner, and one more layer of responsibility added to everything else he was carrying. The Black Cloud reputation he mentions might have started out as a joke, but there's something really revealing about how Popi tells these stories. Every mishap he writes about comes with a lesson. The auto-rotation landing teaches him to be careful of his nose angle. The hydraulic failure forces him to keep his cool in the dark. The rocket systems give him a crash course in precision flying. Even the jettisoned rocket pods, $5,000 worth of equipment dumped into a river, become another story tucked into the back of his mind for next time. He's learning how to survive, one mistake at a time. He might joke about the bad luck, but there's no denying that the platoon is already starting to rely on him in ways he probably never expected. What really struck me while reading this letter is how much responsibility Popi is carrying, even when he's downplaying it. He's not just flying missions anymore, he's an instrument instructor, taking other pilots up for training flights whenever there's downtime. He's learning rockets, flying night missions, and helping check out new pilots like the young sergeant who flew with him during the hydraulic failure. One line near the end of the letter jumped out at me. I'm pretty satisfied so far, but of course I haven't been shot at yet. It's such a casual little throwaway, almost like he's trying to reassure Suzie that everything is fine, but the whole letter is building toward that moment. Every story about wrecked helicopters and near misses is really about how much of this war is out of his control. The bad luck might feel like a black cloud now, but he's still waiting to see what happens when the cloud finally breaks. One of the strangest rhythms of the Vietnam War, and one that Popi's letters are starting to show more and more, is how quickly things could shift from boredom to chaos. One minute, you're sitting in the mess hall joking with the guys about being a jinx. The next, you're scrambling into a helicopter at 3 a.m. to fly into an outpost that's just been overrun by the Viet Cong. There's never any way to know which kind of day it's going to be. And that might be the hardest part. Not the danger itself, but the waiting for the danger to come. By this point in the letters, Popi is starting to transform. From a fresh arrival, still figuring out the rhythm of life in Vietnam, to someone the platoon is already starting to lean on. The Black Cloud jokes might seem like just that, jokes, but they're also a sign that he's becoming a part of the group. He's taking on more responsibility, learning faster than anyone expected, and trying to hold on to his sense of humor along the way. The photo I chose for today is an overhead shot of a 3-sided military outpost. It is clearly dug into the ground with 3 towers. To the left, there is a river. Though this likely isn't the outpost they were called to, it is at least a good example of what sort of things they saw from the air. I'm Alex Lowy, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of Dearest Suzie, and receiving messages from the past that my Popi wrote exactly 60 years ago. I sincerely appreciate your time and interest. Please consider following the podcast on your preferred platform, and if you're enjoying it, I kindly ask that you take the time to rate the show and leave a review. Also, please follow the project on YouTube, X, and Instagram. All likes, comments, shares, and reviews will help grow the reach of this story. The links for these things should be in the description of this episode. Please feel free to email me at dearestsuziepodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say. I'd love to chat or to hear about your stories as well. Thank you for listening, and God bless.